This video is about the very first years of the 20th century, the Edwardian Age, a very short period which saw the end of the Victorian certainties and the beginning of a new period of cultural, social, and political challenges. The beginning of the 20th century is called the Edwardian period, and it is a short but intense period, full of changes in all fields of life. Progress was making flying possible for us. Reforms were passed to improve people's lives. Ireland wants home rule, while abroad the US and German economy are growing steadily. So, while some people are fighting for their rights and sacrifice their lives in the name of freedom and equality, the British Empire is still expanding, and for many British citizens, life is still deeply rooted in the reassuring traditions which they thought had made Britain great all over the world. Until the situation comes to its breaking point and World War I breaks out in 1914. Edward VII became king in 1901, and the Liberal government of Herbert Henry Asquith continued on the path of social reforms already started in the Victorian Age. For example, the 1908 Old Age Pensions Act granted pensions to people over 70, and the 1911 National Insurance Act made free medical treatment available to insured workers. However, the Liberals were split between a reformist element who wished to integrate the demands of the working classes, laying some of the foundations of the welfare state, and a more conservative element who refused, for example, to nominate working-class candidates for MPs. It was during this period that the Labour Party grew into a separate party representing working-class interests and became allied with trade union movements, which won full legal recognition in 1913. Another important political issue was the so-called Irish question. The majority of the Irish population was Catholic and wanted an independent parliament in Dublin, but the Protestant population of Northern Ireland wanted to stay under British rule, so they refused to accept the 1912 Home Rule Bill, and by the outbreak of World War I, the Unionists and Republicans were close to civil war. During World War I, the Republicans staged a rebellion on Easter in 1916, which, though quickly defeated, became a symbol for Irish resistance to British rule. The struggle of women to obtain the right to vote was also part of the political, social, and cultural turmoil which characterized the first decade of the 20th century. In 1903, Emmeline Pankhurst and her daughter Christabel founded the Women's Social and Political Union. The women following the union were called suffragettes. Their cause came to national attention when Emily Davison threw herself under the King's horse at a derby in 1913, thus becoming the movement's first martyr. After many years of struggles and imprisonment, you probably know about the 1913 Cat and Mouse Act. Women over 30 were granted the right to vote. It was 1918, and women had also played a vital role during the war on the home front, working in munitions factories, on farms, and in hospitals. In 1928, the suffrage was extended to women over 21. Besides, the country's economy was changing, and though the empire was still expanding, it was now being surpassed by that of the United States and Germany in terms of growth. However, the aggressive imperial ambitions of Germany had begun to create tension. This will gradually lead to World War I, the most devastating period of war and crisis in human history, which finally shattered the mood of quiet optimism that had opened the century. The war poets wrote about the horror of the trench warfare. W.B. Yeats reminded us of the Easter Rising in his poem Easter 1916, and modernist writers such as Virginia Woolf, James Joyce, and T.S. Eliot described the legacy of war in our lives and in our world. E.M. Forster told us about colonialism in his famous Passage to India. D.H. Lawrence and Joseph Conrad in the UK, Francis Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway in the USA, the Italian writers Giuseppe Ungaretti and Italo Svevo, they all tell us of how the quiet and commonly shared set of values of the previous century has now fallen apart. The confident and assertive tone and atmosphere of the Victorian Age is now dead. The Boer Wars, the independence of Ireland, the British Empire, the new role of women and World War I had definitely changed our world. Things will no longer be the same. We are now moving ahead. The Belle Epoque and the so-called Roaring Twenties are waiting, with a glamour but also with a terrible crisis known as the Great Depression. I hope you found this of some help. You can further develop the topics dealt with and read the novels and poems of the authors mentioned in the video. Useful links in the description section.